Uh, well, the recording has started, but uh, we'll wait for a few seconds because due to some glitch, uh, Atul wasn't. Atul had to be removed. I did not remove it. The system removed it. Uh, just some glitch happened, but I apologize. But this is a joint dialogue of the Indian Society of Artificial Intelligence and Law and Extensity AI. Welcome, everyone. You might be binge watching this on YouTube, or you might be watching it live right now as you have joined this session. Uh, uh, so obviously, why have we assembled here? We obviously made the announcement, and obviously there's an intent to discuss further. Um, see, the idea was that under my research firm, Indic Pacific, we collaborated with Extensity AI, which is a brilliant startup in neurosymbolic AI from Austria, Europe, and Schematise LDA, led by Sankalp. And we three came up with a very unique report on artificial intelligence, market power, and multipolarity. And that report gained its own value and its own, I would say, appraise in a way that it gave a very first principle approach around the geoeconomics of AI in terms of the LLM ecosystems, that is the large language model ecosystems. In case you are a legal audience, you might think LLM means master of laws, but LLM means large language models. So I'm just clarifying for those because I was asked the same in Ramanoa National Law University a week ago, or so forth. So beyond the sarcasm, this is Abhivardhan. I am the ICL president, obviously for a very long time. And along with me, we have a host of speakers who I wish to introduce. First, obviously, the CEO of Extensity AI, Marius. He's somebody who has a PhD in machine learning. He knows his domain. He's very first principled about it. He also has an MBA, so he has that a cool business
Pursuing one.
experience in his own way, pursuing one technically, and and I think that is a good thing for somebody who's working on neurosymbolic AI because it's a very sacred field of AI in its own way. It is a field which is evolving, and unlike most people who assume that AI is all about LLMs, it's not. AI is a very diverse ecosystem, and I think that is something which needs to be understood. Uh, we are happy to have Sankalp Srivastava from Schematise LDA, who's the first author of the report that we wrote. So obviously, we'll discuss about the report. Apart from us three, we have other stakeholders and some of them who will be joining. So I'll first introduce Atul. He is a partner at Saga Legal. And yeah, sorry, Atul, we had to remove you. Actually, I did not remove you. Google removed you. So some glitch happened with Gemini, whatever. So sorry for that. So Atul is a partner at Saga Legal and he's a part of the ICER Advisory Council. Uh, he specializes in white collar matters and AI is something which interests him as well. So welcome. We have Sunil Jose. Sir is an intellectual property lawyer and a professor of practice at Alliance University, and also the founder of Sons Legal, if I'm right. Uh, and at the same time, because I'm not reading a teleprompter, I'm saying as it is. So we have Bogdan, who is the convener of the advisory council, somebody who has been associated with ISIL for a very long time now, and I think he was the second vice president of the AI General Assembly when Sanjay Notani was there. So that was like a long time ago. Now Sanjay Notani is in a different capacity with us. But yeah, Bogdan has been with us in the technology side in a way that he knows what happens in the UK and the European ecosystem of tech. And yes, his skepticism matters in a way. Sometimes it might be a bit still, but it's fine. I think skepticism, when healthy, is always welcome. So that's where I think Bogdan's perspectives really add a lot to the session. All sessions that we do, all discussions we do. Apart from that, we have Sunil Khemka, who will be joining soon. He's somebody in the cybersecurity field, member of IEEE in certain committees, and he is a working professional. Um, he recently was appointed after his membership completion as the co-chair person of the AI Development Committee of ICIL. So he will be joining. I hope so in a short while. Maybe there are some logistic issues with him. And we have Arleta Gorekash, who will also be joining soon. She's a scholar. She's a PhD. She has earned a PhD in competition and technology law in Europe, and she's somebody who has written extensively on European laws and the intersection of technology and competition law. So Arleta will be joining a bit late, but be it as it may, we'll start the session. And I think with that, I think I'll first ask Sankalp about it, because I think we should first discuss about the value of this report. Like, why did this report even come out? Why does it matter? Because Sankalp and I were discussing this minor idea around, I don't know, Feb or March. He can confirm
Yeah.
me better. And we were like, yeah, we should address this aspect around the
Hmm.
multipolarity, because I am somebody who literally decided long back that there should be a strategic affairs committee in ISIL. We have international relations experts who are a part of the advisory council, like Dr. Vignesh Ram, Dr. Al White, Jagannath Panda, who's working in Europe right now on Himalayan matters and Indo-European relations. Brilliant guy. But why this intersection is needed? So uh, that is obviously something we will explore. But first, I think Sankalp should be the first
Yeah.
person to explain why does this report matter to him. So please.
So thank you, Abhivardhan, for the wonderful introduction to everyone and to the paper itself. So yeah, this started, I think my main thread for this goes back to like December. So December 2024. So now we're in December 25, and it's it has been something that, let's, if I wanted to talk about the idea behind this paper, the first principle behind all the other first principles, it was basically me engaging in a lot of software development by myself and wanting to reflect on it using my legal brain. So while I'd ventured very adventurously out into what people call vibe coding, I also wanted to talk about how platforms such as those run by the 3 to 4 main competitors in the market. We were talking about how Google, Microsoft, and Alibaba, and like recently, I mean, we've even seen discussions around how these three have captured the market to such an extent that even competitors who want to provide services relating to, like, any kind of cloud service relating to verification, then Cloudflare, for example, has captured a large section of the market. So this was where I started with. I was very keen on uh, talking about open source. I had some experience in like reading about enforcement of laws because of my work previously in this field regarding enforcement of environmental laws. So I wanted to use my legal brain with the work that I'm doing. And that's where I spoke to Abhivardhan about it, and the idea came up that this is something that has consequences for the geoeconomics, right? Like at the national level, at an international level, both we have certain factors which dominate the market power of any economy. So, for instance, in this paper, we've covered a lot of topics here. We've covered everything from how like as I mentioned, the cloud competitors. We've also covered like the copyright concerns, how the market is evolving for covering like labor disenfranchisement. Then we've covered the effect of regulation, and all of this has happened through the two wonderful co-authors I have had alongside, Abhivardhan and Marius. And yeah, so this entire like uh, sort of like suite of topics that we covered, ranging from power concentration to labor, it was something that stays relevant even today. That's why even a year later we're discussing what started out as an idea, because geoeconomics and market power is something that has a micro level of understanding that people who are working on AI ML through either software development, through either policy, can contribute to understanding better. And regulation is always something that, in my view, I mean, all of us are going to have different viewpoints about regulation. But for me, it was something that sort of exists alongside the systemic tendency of any national economy. So that includes its existence in the international sphere, where there are open source libraries in cyberspace. When we're governing anything, there are open source libraries that create checkpoints for regulation. There are sort of like institutional factors, like there are frameworks and like standards like the Creative Commons, the open source initiative, that create a sort of framework around regulation. But this does not exist in a vacuum. For me, it was something that we needed to examine alongside the socioeconomic consequences. And as you can see on the slides there, that this is something that we wanted to cover very comprehensively. And all of us, like all three of us, gave our input to this uh, particular idea that was only like germane in my brain. Like it was just like a seedling that sort of grew with discussion. And I'm glad that we could do that, because the idea was always to reflect using our personal sort of reflections and experiences. So for me, it was a paper that talks about how India, which has a strategic advantage in terms of, uh, let's say, for example, if it's about uh, positioning India as an AI developer sort of country, where we have like had a recent report where it has been discussed that in a research paper that, I mean, India and US are the top contributors of open source AI repositories. So keeping that in mind, I mean, this was just something that, even looking at the point of training data, for example, we wanted to look at how training data sort of uh, obscures or can like commodify something that is more traditional in its knowledge. So one example that I would give here is that of the training data that we have for languages, right? The data sets that we've covered here in this paper, there have been Indic language based data sets, Bhashini, and other such tools. In fact, I was just at an event yesterday where uh, Kailash Nath was talking about his open source project for languages, which sort of grew with over the years through collaboration with several people who are working in South India on this. So, I mean, there has been sufficient interest on this idea, but nobody has talked about how all of these interact. And that's why it became such an expansive paper which talks about everything that could be covered in the possible scope of it using the three of our inputs. But yeah, like that's the idea behind the paper, to provide something that can help anyone who reads it in understanding what the overall impact on the market power, what the overall impact on regulation, on enforcement, on everything from copyright to institutional standards, how all of these interact. And Abhivardhan made some very nice mind maps, which I think capture the whole extent of it. And yeah, I would like to hand it over to, I think, uh, the rapporteur for this, if they have any thoughts about how the paper could have contributed, or Abhivardhan, if you'd like to take over.
Sure. I'll have the rapporteur involved, but I would like Marius to add his thoughts first, and then I think let the rapporteur, cook up a fusion. Like I'm somebody who loves fusion food, so I'm like, yeah, let's just have a fusion of some thoughts. That's why I think let the main authors speak. I will definitely speak, but a bit later on. Otherwise, I will just speak for 45 minutes. I don't want to do that. So, Marius, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for having me. And I also feel very lucky to have worked on this paper or report with really two great authors. And a bit my angle is also a bit, I mean, it's a bit unconventional. So I'm coming from an AI research perspective. Usually we focus on the most kind of technical aspect, but I think we're at the pivoting point in with AI advancements that it makes sense to also broaden the horizon. Hence, why I'm pursuing the MBA and basically also was very interested when I got in. I think Abhivardhan, we got basically over social media in contact. We wrote a big back and forth, and we came quickly to this kind of joint interest and basically this venture of working, collaborating, and trying to figure out sort of a map. Because I think the first steps before you can, correct something, if you see that something is going wrong, you have to make awareness. And I think this is one of the first steps, in my opinion. And the question is of awareness of what? So the angles that I kind of follow are sort of threefold. I mean, myself, I'm from Austria, not very known as an AI powerhouse. So in that sense, a very small country. Europe in general is very fragmented, so it has already a lot of drawbacks compared to the superpowers, US and China. India, I think, has a very unique position because it has really high-tech talent, and I think it has also, I mean, the size of the country itself and the population. So it has really the ingredients to work things out properly in the future. The question is only, do we have, the room, the breathing room, and the availability due to due to legal restrictions or geopolitical, enforcements of the known, companies also listed already. And the other aspect is basically, because this also affects Austria in that sense, so why I'm interested. And the other aspects, of course, are there are some future concerns. And like I said, I mean, AI is a pivotal technology and is basically a very centralizing one. That's actually a bit different from other advancements in the past. So we think about, introduction of the steam machine or other book printing press and other things. They were, if you want, so democratizing and enabling a lot of things, but actually AI is centralizing a lot of power because of, if you think about knowledge work, it's automating a lot. And if we should ever cross that line to general purpose AI systems, technically it can learn any skill, do any work, and the question will remain then, what are we as a society and from an economical standpoint following? And obviously on the shorter term horizon, I think about attribution, and especially from data perspective, also from rights and from all this misuse of copyrights basically, or CC licensing, which gets misused as saying it's open, so we can just train on it and we don't have to attribute or give anything back to the community that basically provided all this data in the internet. So this is a bit the perspectives that I'm molding and I'm seeing, and very happy to dive in any kind of shape or form deeper in discussion.
Thanks, Marius. So coming to this perspective, I think, yes, I think a lot of aspects are there where Sankalp's initial points inspired me. And I've been thinking like, yeah, there should be something about it, because I had published something in ORF, by the way, which was after February. They invited me and I wrote. And it was more around this whole DeepSeek phenomena. Obviously, that thing is gone. That was like a thing of a past, because obviously new models have come up, Quen has come up, and we can keep talking about large language models. But the DeepSeek phenomena exposed the way we look at global markets, especially the way NVIDIA and other companies are behaving. So that was very interesting for me when I wrote for ORF, and also for Forum of Federations, because when I published that, I think, or maybe the publication was decided, but I think the proofreading was done. At that time, I also wrote another work, which is Normative Emergence in Cyber Geography, which is like a book of sorts of mine only. I gave my acknowledgements to Sankalp in some way for some of the ideas and things. But the one interesting idea in that book also was that when we look at technical practices, it's very clear in law that a lot of technical practices in markets and standards are among technical communities guide, future actions as to how do you regulate and act in a sovereign manner. Now, what happens in the case of governments is that there is no problem in having a sense of regulatory authority. Obviously, that is something which is very obvious. Europe, China, India, everyone needs it in some shape or form, and you just have to act. Like for example, the Sanchar Sathi controversy which happened. The intent was understandable, but the problem was that a lot of developers found out bugs in the app. So again, the intent is not bad or evil. The problem is a lot of bureaucrats have discretionary powers that will dilute the purpose of regulation, and who will go to the Honorable Delhi High Court and otherwise. So same applies in general regulation across the world. It's not just an India specific problem. I can even talk about the UK. I can even talk about the United States, right? Like there is something with the Genesis mission that they want to do litigation against any state laws that come up, despite the fact that Vice President of US JD Vance actually supported Congress people from both the parties that, you know what, we will not stop states' efforts to regulate AI, especially in matters like child protection, parental control, and other forms of harms. Because US is a federal democracy, federal republic, and India is a quasi-federal democracy in its own way. So two different systems, two different approaches. And Europe also, the omnibus bill around the EU AI Act and other things are a different discussion. I've not gone through the omnibus bill, by the way, so I don't know much, but I definitely know that there are certain aspects. But what is interesting about the AI community, which nobody talks about, like everyone misses it, even startups miss this, is that the AI community globally is decentralized. So the way data flows is definitely centralized in a way because it has been like the old age thing, right? Like since the social media time, post the first years of Google and everything. So everyone knows that part. But the decentralized nature of the AI talent, AI communities, OSS communities, everything, that is very crucial to decide how do we look at these things and how do we come up with solutions which make sense. I think that is something which has been ignored a lot. I told the same to Cuts Institute of Cuts Global Affairs also in their session, and I think the same thing I have told so many people in the government and people in startups, the same thing, that we have to acknowledge this aspect. Fortunately, this is something which is understood. In fact, today's DPIIT Gen AI and Copyright Committee, oh my goodness, I read their conclusions directly. I did not even read their global landscape and all because I know what it is. They will refer the Perlmutter report and everything. I read the hybrid model. It's interesting how statutory licensing is being proposed, which brings us back to OpenAI case and ANI. I don't know where the honorable bench is going. And I don't want to comment on that to stir any questions because it's a pendant thing. But that's my view. I think the decentralized nature of it should be seen more to understand geopolitics, because the problem is that obsession with semiconductors, obsession with cloud, I think that is, affecting the way we look at the way the geopolitics of AI really is, because it starts with data, but then algorithms are equally responsible, because algorithmic workflows and the kind of risks and the kind of inabilities that they create, I think that is a very major aspect, because that's what Sankalp also said, that even in the Gen AI landscape, the bigger aspect of monetization was data labeling and annotation. And that drove the Gen AI industry, right? And I think that is something which will be subject to changes. So it will be very interesting to see how it goes. But before we have Atul, and since Sunil has joined, hi Sunil. We introduced you, by the way, so it's okay. Again, to introduce, Sunil is a co-chairperson of the AI Development Committee, somebody who is a pioneer of his own in cybersecurity and AI. Very appreciate his presence. I'd let the rapporteur ask if he has some questions to three of us first quickly, and then I think then I will pass it on to Atul and then others quickly. Yeah, if you have any questions, yeah.
Yes, Abhivardhan, sir, one particular question that crossed my mind is about the data monopolization aspect about in the geoeconomics thing. So the argument it goes around that data is often Western data is often applied to Indian context, and that's where the problem comes up. And there the nationalist agenda starts pushing that India should build from its own experiences and discard any foreign influence when it comes to our AI industry. So how do we balance getting the best practices from there and also the aspect that reject any Western influences? Because data is inherently Western, right?
No, but a lot of data is Indian also now. So the thing is that there are a lot of Indian data which is bigger than what we know. In fact, I would rather argue that the Indian data testbed is the most democratic testbed in the world. Anyone can exploit our data for incident response, whatever, advertising industry, you just name it, right? So we are a very democratic data testbed in some way for data resource companies, data centers, and everything. So it's very interesting. But yeah, but I will let Sankalp add since he has raised the hand. So yeah,
Yeah. So
and then
yeah. So I just wanted to say that uh, data as it's like a checkpoint or like it's like a place where you can regulate the AI, and that's what like we've tried to look at through in this paper. And when you say data is a Western concept, I would say like think of it more in terms of how the concept of like economic power revolves around the Western hegemony, and like that's not something that we want to necessarily say that there is a definitive sort of control sphere there, but there is some sort of I would say like standardization that occurs with specialization in certain fields relating to regulation. That includes, let's say, the composition of the governing bodies of various organizations that constitute the regulation, and includes the fact that as a market power which is concerned with other developmental concerns, India may not venture heavily into forming a lot of investing a lot of mechanisms into like a lot into the mechanisms of regulating data, because that is something that I have noticed. Like we have talked about this in our paper. There are monetary and non-monetary ways to regulate and like to compensate for data, and that's what we talked about in the paper. That this is where compensation comes into play, and this is also where I think some sort of there's a limitation in the concept of Gen AI itself, because if you look at it technically, how much an embedding can represent, and I think some of the technical people, if they want to come in on this, maybe can talk about how much an embedding can represent itself is something that is determined by a foundational model. That is something that may not always capture the nuance in certain high risk use cases. I've been considering it in legal tech, and Gen AI there sort of fails. And I think neurosymbolic AI and other modern approaches that are coming up can sort of make up for the lack of nuance in any kind of data, whether it's traditional data, whether it's uh, like, whether it's like even something that is more highly accepted as like, a standardized form of factual or knowledge based information. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I will
And
let Marius add. Yeah.
yeah, maybe what helps to give a bit of a context also of AI itself, because somehow the nuance of modern, especially generative AI or LLMs, kind of created this for many people, this illusion that AI just spawned, in 2019 somewhere around, and kind of consumed all the air in the space, especially large language models. AI is a concept stemming from the 50s around, so in the 1956, actually in Dartmouth, where McCarthy and several other, Harvey Minsky, Simon and Newell, and so on, basically participated in. And this was where this term artificial intelligence was first coined. What it means is actually, I mean, artificial is clear, it's in the computer, but intelligence is the behavior or the imitation of behavior, basically, to some species. It could be human, it could be animal behavior, and so on. Now, in several years, passed by, and there were several decades and phases of AI. So in the beginning, it was more symbolic AI. So meaning, all of you know that all these programs that we're looking right now at are symbolically programmed, are programming language, formal languages, logic, theory, etc. on basically deterministic behavior and so on. But these are all symbolic forms. And then basically at somewhere in the 90s around, connectionist models kind of started to take over. Connectionist models is a neural network, basically, from an architecture standpoint. There were several advancements, but I don't want to go into details. But the point is, from that point onward, somewhere around the 2000 and I would say 4 to 6 and so on, where suddenly compute became available and also data at some, at some point YouTube and so on, and the social platforms started. So data became suddenly more available, and somewhere around 2012, it became with computer vision. It became firstly really renowned and known, the ImageNet challenge and so on. So basically computer vision was the first advancement that kind of the public started to see. And I think the genius move was around 2017 with Attention is All You Need coming from Google, a paper that basically came with the idea that actually we could take this scaling properties actually out of computer vision, because there were already like advances in sequence-to-sequence models and other things that you already know with Siri, LSTMs, and so on, that are from the 90s around. But I think really interesting part came across when we had abundant compute and abundant, if you want so, data already in 2017 around up to 2020, that we could actually use these properties of scaling from computer vision, apply them on large language models. So suddenly this is exactly where everyone started to notice it, especially with the launch of ChatGPT and so on. That was really then the aha moment for the general public to see that there is actually something happening, and this is like affecting everyone now. And because language is a domain that we speak, right? It's not abstract concept matrices or anything. It's literally what we say and do. And then suddenly, I think that's the ignition point where people kind of noticed AI really infiltrating their lives. Although, you had your Roomba, you had all of the devices around you that already had embedded AI. Maybe all of you played some sort of computer games or anything like that. That's all AI, and since the 50s, like I said. Now the point is it a data problem today? And this is kind of where you were touching on. And I would say it's not really a data problem, nor is it a scaling problem today that we have. I think we have abundant data, and we have also abundant compute. But we saw with DeepSeek and other if you have some constraints, you can basically wow the world and show them with less monetary expenses that you can build and compete with other labs that have invested billions, if you want, so to build their initial AI systems and data centers. So the idea is, what is the next frontier that we're facing? And that's kind of what we was touching upon, neurosymbolic systems. So this is this hybrid mixture of basically connectionist models and the symbolic form. Pioneers like Gary Marcus and others have basically already advocated for this since the 2000s and so on. But the idea is basically to say we need better algorithms against it. It's funny, we're coming back because there was always like, you need this triad of either data, compute, or algorithms. And now we have to make advancements again in algorithms because we have a lot of data, we have a lot of compute, but we haven't figured out in 2025 one algorithm that can autonomously learn itself a skill. That is not possible. What we are doing right now is we basically throw if we want to, the internet data or a lot of portion of it at a huge algorithm and compress it into a model, and that's basically just regurgitating just the imitation of what everything it saw. And I mean, if you show me one human that could consume the entire internet data, then you could be much more capable than any kind of language model, because you have also reasoning and logic on top of that. So that is maybe what we need in the next frontier, systems that can build up own world models, that can really think and start acquiring skills. And this is not a data problem, in my opinion. So sorry for the long, but I think this context gives a bit perspective on things.
No, I think it's great. And I would rather argue that there will be a bunch of people who are hyping around Gen AI. They will very, very swiftly try to shift to world models after looking at Dr. Fei-Fei Li's work. But yeah, well, that's how the venture capital space works. I am not commenting on investors and others, but that is what it is. So I think, yeah, hype definitely is a problem. And I think data contamination is also a problem. Like the way people thought that synthetic data generation will just work out. I used to think it can work out, but then the problem is, unless it is very, very specific, like in the health sector, we know that, you can put synthetic data as noise to ensure that the AI system is not biased. Now that used to work in a very smaller context. But when you use agents and you use LLMs for this, the variance in data and data bias, these two are very different things. So we don't even have the chance to figure out, which is, I think somebody wrote it yesterday very beautifully, that hallucination itself is a marker of some form of model collapse, that the model is not able to do in some shape or form what it has to. And I think there the reliability question comes in. I think that's great. I think I hope Chirkangshit, you're satisfied with the responses, and I think, but yeah, Marius, you can quickly
Just
add.
one
Yeah.
add on. I think it's even like models cannot do more than they have been trained on, and this is a generalization problem. I think this is also what you're saying. And the problem, what we're trying is, I mean, the real world is much more complex than, you know, just this fixed data that we have collected. And obviously there are different problems there. Bias is other things that I will not touch now on, but what I mean is really we don't have a continual learning algorithm that understands existing data as we do. Humans quickly are grasping. Look at children. You show them concept once, and they basically capture that concept and can just transport it into a new, even objects or new thoughts, right? So, and LLMs and other kind of generative AI models nowadays are just really stupidly reapplying the same recipe that how they were trained on. And that's the problem. And we tend to overgeneralize for the models that we believe that they can do more because it looks impressive at first sight, like a PhD level, right, you know, recitation. But then if you look into details, you see a lot of holes and problems that occur.
Yeah, that's there. That's there. Novelty is also not there in writing. Like, it doesn't feel that it is something which is, and we have also lost that thing among people that what seems human anymore sometimes, you know, that novel way of articulating words and things that's in the word space. But well, anyways, on a funny note, I saw something in old Lucknow. So, you know, there used to be those magic shows that people used to do. Now people have started creating Gen AI based magic show posters in Hindi, and I'm like, wow, wonderful. That's a very funny way of, yeah, I saw it in Ashbag. Not like Gomti Nagar, I saw it in Ashbag. Literally old Lucknow. So ironic,
Let's
funny.
assume it's
Anyways.
possible to have, I don't know, transistors that think. Let's be that reckless and just we have transistors that think. Okay, why would we have that? Life didn't get better in the last 25 years overall. No, we didn't. Quality of life went down overall. I'm talking about, sure, it's not linear, certain things, but I mean, who the heck needs I know a TV as big as the wall, smart and spyware, of course, to have this very crisp image and super high performant when they barely afford the bill of electricity, where they think twice before taking public transport, where they need 2-3 times the time to get to the same places as 25 years ago, simply because the traffic management is a total mess, AI or not. Okay, so the basics of life, which are the most important, we call them basics, but actually we cannot do without them, are going down consistently for the last 25 years odd. Again, it's not linear, it's like that, but it's and I talked with Dr. Jeffrey Funk about that. He's of the same opinion for the last 15 years running. I've seen it, right? I've seen it. You can't rely on anything anymore like you used to do 25, 30, 40 years ago. You just can't. But hey, it's high tech. So the question is, why even have it? Doesn't make the life better. We have the proof for the last 25 years. Tech doesn't make the lives better. It just doesn't. Tech is tech. And there's no you know, really tremendous innovation since the days of, I mean, I don't know, definitely more than 25 years. There's innovation, but it's piecemeal. It just doesn't, is meaningless. That's what it is. Okay, that's what it is. Do we have another Marie Curie? No, we don't. Do we have a Turing? No, we don't. They are not even possible, man. These people are not possible. Why? Number one, there will be unemployment in today's world. Nobody will employ them. Marie Curie, Turing, I'm not even talking about Fermi or Einstein. Understanding the atom. That's not what it's all about. But the billions are flying around like it's chicken feed. For what? I mean, they don't even exist. Most of those billions are just on paper. From the future. What future, man? We are in a World War state. That's the future right there, being bombed.
Well,
I'm not joking. This is
yeah.
official in UK. Just the other
Yeah,
day,
yep,
and
yep.
it has been
Yeah.
since the beginning of 2025. That's what we,
Well,
you know, all these billions should be focused on, making the life better overall, little by little, not all these mumbo jumbo. So the question is, why having transistor than that thing? Why even think about that? Where the basics of life are going down for 25 years running.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Yep.
What's your opinion, all of you? Like, are you happy about that? You think tech will solve it all eventually, and we should be optimistic? And because, I mean, whatever, you know, transistor then things may be just magically will, I don't know, start curing cancers or I don't know, make people immortal, like some guy like Musk was talking about that. Like Musk was talking about, and the spaceships will be self-forming, like Tsuk was saying. Like, yeah, I mean, all this nonsense,
yeah.
and people actually even
People
listen
make a
to
lot
it,
of-
and
yeah.
they have, you know, they've been given airtime, and the journalists don't even challenge those guys at all. You know, another guy, I'm not sure if that's even real. It looks very real and quoted and all.
Yeah.
A billionaire
Yeah.
Palantir founder will say, if you would have the, you know, if you would be in charge, he will hang people up in public spaces after 3 very serious offenses. But
Well,
they have the cheek to criticize China for one party rule. Like, you can't make this up, man. You can't make it. It's just so total nonsense. And so that's the world we live in today. So the question is, why even consider thinking machines? Like, Turing dismissed the idea. Turing dismissed it in 1950. He said the question is a complete fallacy without defining universally what a machine is. Anyone knows what a machine is? I don't. It can be a pocket calculator. It can be a mechanical calculator, or it can be a drill. That's still a machine, or a fridge. So we don't really agree what a machine is, but we're talking about, you know, we're going to have AGI and whatever that means and so on. Isn't this pointless, really? Generally speaking. I mean, yeah, novels are fine. You should read a novel and, you know, fiction and all. That's good for the well-being. But, like, you know, let's keep it real. In the end, life is not getting better. It just doesn't overall. It doesn't. Quality sinks, slop everywhere, and it's not just because of Gen. It's just scaled 10 times, but it existed, you know, before 2018, 17, those slop. And everything is going to be, I mean, not going to be, it is very superficial and sometimes just an outright lie. That's it. That's what it is.
Yep. I will let Marius quickly add, and then I will ask Sunil's intervention, then Atul's intervention. Sorry, Atul, you were going to be next, but well, this Bogdan just popped up. I apologize, but that's okay. We all have everyone's wisdom. So Marius, quick addition.
Yes,
and then
I'll briefly just give my thoughts because I had already enough speaking time. So I think we have to disentangle a couple of things here. I think there are the different kind of things. So utility versus value, what is valuable and what is giving and creating value versus its application, economic pressures and other things, right? So from a utility standpoint, why you need efficient or basically chips that, you know, can have in silicon neural wirings or other things, just because of energy efficiency. I mean, we kind of still see these problems of current machines where magnitudes off, if you think about how humans can process very complex thoughts with a couple of watts compared to, you know, megawatt data centers and other things, right? So I think it's just about the efficiency there. So the utility, that's the technology part, right? The value, what creates and, you know, gives value to things. I mean, many things. As soon as one person gives value to one object, if you value this ring, for you it's meaningless. For me, it's a representation of marriage or other things, right? which reminds me of my wife. For you, like I said, if I would give you my ring, it's worthless. It's just a piece of junk. So the point is, like, we create value and give value to things. If you see this as an issue for you, others might say there is value in having thinking machines and, you know, giving a future there where we could decouple, for instance, from work, because we could let machines work and we can focus on things that are more valuable for the individuals. Yeah, so this is a bit my 2 cents on it, maybe. And from the application, I mean, from the economic perspective, I think many companies are pressured in the direction of having to give results. Expectations are high, the hype cycles and so on, not fulfilling. You know, you get billions of dollars investment, as you say, right? And then you have to bring the return of that, you know, billions of dollars, and then suddenly you cannot jump every year over year 30% improvements and so on in a benchmark, because you would overshoot 100% easily. So now the question is, where is that coming from and where is it going? And then they start, you know, finding shortcuts and other things. But, you know, let the others take it from here to give more context.
And I will let Sunil add, but I want Atul to add. But before Atul adds, just 1 minute. I think what's happened with the PE firms is that, and that's something not just in AI, I think it happened in other sectors as well. And I think it will shift to other aspects like carbon trading and other things once the Gen AI market correction happens. I don't think that it's a big balloon burst. I don't think that's happening, because corrections have already started slowly in enterprise LLM use and all that stuff. Like if you look at the Microsoft OpenAI contract recently, the new one, the new agreement terms are very interesting from a mergers and acquisition angle, but also from an AI angle, actually, AI future angle. So I think there's gonna be some shelving, but I'm not gonna predict on that. But I think this is a global problem. But then we also have to take into the Trump tariff aspect. But I'm not getting on that, but because that will totally deviate us from the AI and geopolitics, and we'll get into Trumponomics. I don't want to discuss Trumponomics. So Atul, up to you, please.
No, I'll just stick to the report that we have in front of us. I mean, there's a lot to say about AI and geopolitics as a whole. I mean, it's a very wide subject. But I like the idea of how you have put them together. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, you know, we keep saying that AI is the new electricity. But this report quietly adds, yes, and the global cloud companies are the new power utilities with much better lawyers. And as a lawyer, I'm contractually obliged to say that AI is transformative. And the report has helped me ask a ruder question: transformative for whom? And who is just doing more unpaid overtime for the algorithm? You know, so questions primarily put. India is not just about AI in India is not just about the clever models that we have. It's about who is controlling the infrastructure, who's bearing the labor burden, whose knowledge is quietly absorbed into the global ecosystem. And this, whatever you have put together, is showing us how a handful of cloud and chip players shape the AI value chain, how Indian and global South workers are hidden behind this AI washed business models, and how the digital commons, including indigenous and open source knowledge, is expropriated without meaningful consent, credit, or compensation. You know, and what happens eventually is, you know, AI law as a whole is like, you know, your terms and conditions, technically there, practically unread, and written by whoever has the most bargaining power. So this seems to be what I have been able to gather from the report. I mean, it has a lot of takeaways, and if there is one legal takeaway from the report, it is that AI law. I mean, I'm talking as a lawyer because I can only talk about it from the legal perspective. It is that AI law in India cannot be confined to AI ethics and privacy. You know, it has to sit at the intersection of, say, for example, competition law for cloud and compute then labor law for AI washed work, and IP data governance law for expropriated commons. So it is a culmination of everything to put together. We are at a juncture of, you can't really put yourself and say that, this is the model that we follow, this is that model. We can't say that, you are either you're basing yourself from the EU based law or the US based law or anything of that sort. We are actually taking out metal from every single place that we can find. But at the end of the day, whether we are having a law, so to speak, is something that, I mean, I don't think that we have anything at this point of time for insofar as the regulatory space is concerned. Uh, we have an excellent written vision documents and enthusiastic press releases that keeps coming in. But it's a polite way of saying that vision is not a substitute for enforcement. I'll just stop it at that.
No, I agree with you. Like, I've been following India AI since 2020, so I really know the vision documents and the kind of things that come out. And if you look at India itself, I think Australia is one interesting member in the Quad, which has non-binding guidelines for some interesting reasons, definitions and stuff. But the thing with regulation, and that's what we did in our roundtable, basically a very interesting discussion with DSAI, Raymondson from Australia. I think he works in Herbert Smith Freehills, and he runs this Data Science and AI Association in Australia. So, and the same problem. AI regulation discourse is literally plummeted in a way that it's chaotically static. It's not like progressive in a way, and I think that is a problem. The only country which I find interesting right now, doing in a very consultative fashion, binding but also in a very unique way, without attracting a very big sense of liability, which is affecting economy, is Japan. For that whole name and shame approach, which is a very Japanese cultural way to do. Very funny, but very interesting. Like,
now,
if you do some,
ultimately, what we need to decide is whether our legal and policy frameworks on contracts, labor, and data, community data, whether they can keep up with the pace of which this technology is growing at the end of the day, or whether we will end up as a large AI market with very little structural power.
Yeah, that's true. Considering multi-sectoral, multilingual data and the way our markets are, especially tier 2, tier 3 cities where, there are startups which are possible to come and get opportunities. So, yeah, totally agree. Yeah. I'll let my rapporteur add, and I think since Sunil wants to add, what I'll do is that Chirkangshit, you can ask the question to Atul and Sunil. Sunil also comes from a tech side. So whatever has been discussed, I think Sunil can add also, and it will be his first intervention. So I think if you wish to ask something to both Atul and Sunil, that would be great. And then Sunil can first respond and then Atul. So.
Yes, sir. So, in regards to the discussion by Atul sir about indigenous data extrapolation, India currently, as it stands, does not have a lot of scope protecting indigenous data. I mean, the government has claimed it a lot of times that we have these depositories and we protect all this. However, the government has never acknowledged the fact that all of these regulations, they might be able to protect other literary works under copyright, but they have never acknowledged they won't be able to protect indigenous data under copyright because it cannot fall under the present copyright definition. So the government, I think the government first needs to acknowledge that we will hold indigenous data as an IP asset, and then move on to protect it from the data extrapolation where it is used for AI. So, sir, how do you think that journey will go on when we are like one step? Instead of saying we are one step behind, we are like 2 to 3 steps behind, because we first need to acknowledge that there must be IP acknowledgement, then there should be protection from AI.
See, it's actually multi-layered. It can't happen over a single legislation or a single process. Our AI systems are trained on digitized and often Eurocentric corpora it is hardly, it's structurally underrepresented. There are oral traditions and which is they're critical for the indigenous communities, and tools like care principles, community data trustees, Bhashini, remember the Bhashini linked support for oral history as concrete proposals to embed. I mean, it seems like an AI. It's all there as a part of our national AI pipeline, but I don't know how far we will be able to progress. We can at this point of time we can all keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. I mean, let's see that it will all cover up, adequately.
And Sunil, please feel free to add in. Welcome. Your first ISAIL dialogue, but yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much. I mean, building on that, I was hearing the conversation from Bogdan, Marius, Abhivardhan. I just wanted to add, my takeaway is that India needs a whole of economy AI playbook. I mean, that pairs the innovation with bargaining power of citizens. Practically that means 4 moves, right? I mean, the first is competition tools for cloud and compute, including interoperable standards, portability, targeted compute credits for startups, and the public interest research, right? I mean, these kind of, I think, is very important. The second, labor protections for the hidden AI workforce with fair pay floors, right? I mean, audit rights and the ability to collectively bargain the data work conditions. And third, the data governance that recognizes the common, for example, community that trust the data, and the consent by the default, right? I mean, and compensation when there is indigenous open knowledge is commercialized. Fourth point I wanted to add was there should be a hard accountability through algorithmic impact assessment and safety cases for high risk use cases, and the public procurement that prefers open interfaces. This will create some benchmark, and this is not just anti innovation, it is pro resilience. I mean, if we align incentive this way, AI becomes a tool for broad perspective. I mean, not just a rent for infrastructure, what I mean? That's
a nice perspective. No, it's totally fine. I think since Atul started this discussion around regulation a bit, I think because nearly a month ago, if I'm right, I came up with a regulatory tracker for IPLR, which was a fun experiment I did. That I'll so we did that. Okay, we'll show you regulatory sources from India. So we showed everyone that these are judicial sources, these are non-binding sources, these are consultative sources, this is BPDPA, this is IT Act and everything, right? And one aspect which became very apparent was obviously, and which is what our report also shows that we did with Sankalp and Marius and ExtensityAI, is that there is an element of economic and market law, and which is very important. I had given reference to the Beijing Intellectual Property Court's approach on AI and copyright that they said that don't use structural copyright laws, use an economic approach to counter misuse and violation of consent. Give it a market law angle also. So that's also an interesting way to look at it when it comes to these models, due to the fact as to how model weights work and the whole debate around it. But one thing which interests me, since we're talking about India and the report is also about it, and I think Marius might go a bit interested, and that's where I will bring Sunil, sir, after 1 hour, technically, is the trade secret angle. Because what's happened is that, yes, Anthropic had to pay billions, technically 1 billion and so forth, for the books and the copyrightable content. Yes, OpenAI is in deep soup. Yes, there are copyright related lawsuits happening, which are very interesting, even in China. But I think what's going to make sense is that the copyright understanding has been saturated. Because see, what happens is that whenever a new technology is introduced, be it in climate, energy, AI, blockchain, whatever, the legal and policy extent that it goes in terms of how mobilized the legal understanding can be, policy understanding can be, that is exposed very well. That not only decides whether it is practical enough, but it also decides the future of evolutionary stuff, which will come in the same league of things. Because Canada, just yesterday or day before, came up with a registry of AI use cases. And I have been like speaking out loud for at least 1 year now that, well, I proposed it in an AI bill I drafted out of fun in 2023. Second version came in March. I proposed that in section 12, I said that there should be a registry of AI use cases with a very specific very specific metadata. I drafted it in a way to ensure that it doesn't violate trade secrets, because LLM benchmarks are messed up because nobody wants to give data because trade secrets. But classification of AI systems is now important. Not like to create a very direct liability approach, but at least some way, because even the Indian Trade Secrets Bill by the Law Commission of India, I found it very interesting. Arunima, she's not in this session. I wish she was. She is not well right now. But Arunima and I wrote an article on this, like how this trade secret angle might be a way, because we analyzed the Perlmutter report. So I'll just pass on to Sunilji, and then I think, maybe I'll let Sankalp add on this, but I'll first ask Sunil on this. But yeah, please. Sunilji, yeah. I am referring to you, not Sunil Khemka. So yes.
I was just waiting for the clarifications anyway. So basically, I've been watching this developments in AI from an IP perspective for a long time. So I see a lot of things which is unexpected. One is this, the entire discussions narrative happening around the fair use theory, which I felt it was a big conspiracy. Because if you see this, the companies started with the litigations which started with the New York Times against OpenAI was nowhere. I mean, it's not reached anywhere right now. But years before, even the AI systems have started copying, scraping the data from the internet. Now, I think these guys knew very well that, that they are going to be, exposed very soon. So I think that was a big conspiracy, because I read somewhere that, the human data is going to be exhausted by 2028. I don't know whether, you people know is better, but I'm just talking from a point of view of an IP perspective. Is it really important, or is it really relevant, to understand that, the human data, which is actually feeding this LLM machines, is going to get exhausted by 2028 or something like that, and you won't be having genuine fresh data to feed on the LLM machines after that. So I'm just thinking from the perspective of, because the discussion was about geoeconomics, from the global south, where are we heading to? Where we suppose we are developing a system, will be able to train our models, on human data? So that's what one question I have. The question I am asking about the fair use theory is that now the unexpected turn of events was that when the New York Times filed a case against OpenAI, people believed that the OpenAI suddenly get into a agreement with New York Times, and then that will be settled, and that's going to be the practice for the future. Now, what happened? Suddenly, the companies which could afford it enter into a multi-million-dollar agreement with major creators and authors, and they secured their the training material. So what happened at the same time, companies like Reddit and maybe X, I'm not sure about X, the previous Twitter, they closed their APIs, and now this is not open to for sale. So where is the global? Where are we going to get the data? If you want to develop something like that, where are we going to get the data? So what I feel is the fair use theory is going to be exhausted. I mean, by the time the world is going to evolve something on this, where it is an exception or no, I think the relevance of that discussion is going to be irrelevant. I mean, the relevance is going to be get over. So that is one thing which I didn't expect from an IP point of view. Second thing, the IP system in respect of this the entire AI ecosystem is, I feel it's very strange. As Abhivardhan was pointing out, the trade secrets, it is nobody expected that. The companies are more shifting towards trade secrets than a robust system of IP like patents or copyright to protect its own systems. That's really strange. That's what I feel, because now I understand that the OpenAI, you don't know what is the architecture behind the OpenAI, or I mean, maybe if I'm wrong, please correct me, because I'm not a technical guy. But even for that purpose, some of the open source LLMs like Llama, I understand that these guys are also says no. If you want, you cannot train their competitors on their own data. That's what I understand. So these are all from. Are we seeing something which is anti-IP? In the field of AI ecosystem. That's what really concerns me as an IP lawyer, because the trade secrets, in my point of view, trade secrets are not at all an IP, because it doesn't have the basic IP. The theory is not working there. If it is purely IP, then you have to expose, or you have to give it to the public after some time, and then which is not happening in the case of trade secret. Trade secret is not an IP in my point of view. But these people the AI ecosystem is actually using trade secrets to protect their system under the false guise of IP protection. So I feel that is, I don't know where it is going to take the IP protection in respect of the AI ecosystem. That is one concern I have, because I remember when you talk about the hardware system. I understand that one company in Taiwan is right. Actually, they're making the chips now, right? ASMC, something like that. ASMC, right? So yeah, I think in ASMC. So because these guys are also keeping. They have not filed any patent. They are keeping it as a trade secret. I understand. So it's very interesting to see this. The companies which are the big major players in the AI ecosystem is finding trade secrets as a method to protect their own innovations. That's what That's what one thing which we want to contribute from an IP point of view.
So before Sankalp adds, quick point for him where I think he can actually bring a very progressed perspective is actually the question of data contamination. I'm not going to comment on whether data exhaustion can happen. I think that's a very different discussion, and I think it's not a legal policy or even a tech discussion. It's more of a, what I can say, anyways, history discussion. So I think one interesting aspect which I want Sankalp to add upon, and I think there the rapporteur should ask questions later on. Maybe Atul can also add on later on, but is data contamination. So Sankalp, there you go.
Thank you, Abhivardhan. And yeah, so like summing up, what I got from this, I also want to go back to the paper for some of the like insights that I'm referring to, like trade secrets and IP laws, right? We've talked about this in the paper, albeit in a tangential manner. It's something that, I mean, you rightly said, Atul said that copyright law, I mean, AI law does not exist because it's something that's more in the contractual sphere. And that's where trade secrets come in, like, a salve to the like pain that all creators around are feeling, like, and that's where I think if we were to look at regulation of IP law, what the paper offers like as a comprehensive like solution, I think as a hint from my perspective, it was to um like look at what the regulation scenario in any jurisdiction is, because cyberspace jurisdiction has had this limitation all throughout its existence, and so copyright laws and copyright licenses, these are just one part of the puzzle. There is the problem that I keep referring to is the problem of how in India we're grappling with the rule of law itself, right? Like enforcement itself is a problem. And here is where I think things like, contractual law, I think they operate in a sphere where there is not enough bargaining power. And I'll just briefly like want to say like thanks to Bogdan also for bringing in that humanistic argument about how whether any of this makes sense. The intervention was mostly around that for me. And yeah, I mean, if you look at it, AI is something that has come in from such like a one-way route, that Gen AI I'm talking about, like that nobody acknowledges the fact that how Marius spoke about since the introduction of AI as a term, and even much earlier, going back to systems back in the 50s and the 60s, when we were using statistical models to predict economical, like, measures, and that was happening the world over. We never talk about how all of this is something that was its own form of AI, and people were writing about in the field of econometrics, in the field of jury metrics about this. But all of a sudden in 2017, when it appears that people with market power, or by people I mean companies with market power, can exercise contractual bargaining power over their end users, over the general uh, l- person in the economy, that's when AI becomes such a commodified like term, something that can be scaled, something that can be you know uh, deployed at massive this thing uh, endpoint, like across endpoints. So that's one of the things that, if you look at it from that point of view, there was not enough democracy in Gen AI entering the sphere, and now that's where I think I want to like also uh, say that the idea behind this paper was to look at all of our diverse perspectives and see how we can navigate this in good faith, right? As like collaborators across the world with different capabilities. Marius is working on neurosymbolic. I'm working on using GenAI for some sort of like, assistance with my own vibe coding, as they call it. But like I'm also working on data for instance. And there are some like good points that come up through collaboration. And the idea behind it is how can we navigate what has been marketed to us and what is now going toward trade secret territory, going towards this privatized sort of domain where like we won't have much say because there's going to be vendor lock-in, like what Sunilji was saying, like OpenAI does not allow people to train, or Llama may not allow. Llama is one of, I think, the more permissive models, but others don't even allow you to train on synthetically generated data. So if you give something as an input and you get some data as an output, you have to use that again on their own infrastructure. So that is something that is severely limiting, and that's where we can navigate using our like strengths and weakness, like to overcome our weaknesses, and that's I think something that the slide on the screen right now. This is where I'd also come into uh, like talk about how India has a unique role to play in terms of data, because there is so much knowledge in this country. There is no dearth of diversity in human experience. There is like something that, I mean, there's going to be an immense like what we're seeing now is like languages are being dissolved into one common language in a lot of places. But there is an immense requirement for data to be captured, and that to be done ethically will require collaboration to navigate what trade secrets law is heading towards, to navigate what vendor lock-in is taking us towards. And that's what I think this paper tries to present as one of its theses. But yeah, I would like to yield the floor again to the moderators.
Sure. I will have Sunil, that is Sunil Khemka, to quickly add since he has been raising his hand for some time, and I wish to have him have his
Yeah,
interventions, and then maybe the rapporteur will,
yeah, I mean, as Sunil sir has added, and then Sankalp also added, like, I just wanted to say, like, I think you are absolutely right that shift toward trade secrets is marking, like, it marks the deeper structural change in how AI innovation is being protected, right? It's less about openness and more about control over data and the model architecture. I mean, what it does is, like, it creates a paradox, right? AI thrives under shared knowledge, yet legal frameworks are moving towards opacity. And for India, this highlights the need for a hybrid IP approach where transparency and interoperability and the public interest coexist with commercial protection. Otherwise, we risk um, enforcing the digital monopolies instead of, like, fostering inclusive and innovation driven ecosystem. That's what I'm trying to say.
great. So I'll let the rapporteur ask all of the panelists if he has any questions. Meanwhile, I'll definitely showcase something, but I think let him first ask the question. So yeah.
Yes. So one, I'll open it for all of the panel. One question that I have discussed earlier with Abhivardhan sir as well, about seeing an AI model as an essential facility, as when we see under the competition law, the talk that, like, what we talked about as that, well, when AI thrives under openness, but we are pushing it towards opacity. And this is also something that the regulators would take notice of when they see that certain AI models are necessary for, let's just say, for industries to function downstream. So that's when an AI model can be seen as an essential facility, let's just say by the CCI. How would that scenario work out when it collides with the idea of the IP protection and the trade secrets that we have been talking about? I open this question to the entire panel. I would like to hear everyone's thoughts on this.
And my request is everyone to be a bit brief, but just so that we can have everyone add its perspective if they wish to. I mean, it's up to them. But yeah, I don't know. Yes, go on.
Yeah, so I just want to say that one of the things is that any regulation that seeks to put this into like effect essential services will have to look at how AI economics has been functioning, which is sort of in a very unipolar way. So like if that happens, we will be constrained by, again, the contracts dictate what, like, and private industries can always navigate this sort of essential commodity exception. So I think what's needed is more like um, cross-sectoral sort of and domain-specific regulation in the economic sphere, along with some sort of the Competition Act regulation as well.
And since we were discussing a bit about trade secrets, I just came across this report by the DPIIT Committee for GenAI and Copyright. So they propose this hybrid model of royalty for AI developers. Their conclusion is, and this is something which people might not agree with, is that the TDM exception, the text and data mining exception, is something which might not work per se, to create, and thereby might create too much confusion. So, well, they came up with this model, but again, interesting. But I think this joint dialogue can be a very good way to give feedback also. So I think I'll just share this document at least to the advisory council people and the people who are present here today. And yeah, if they wish to give any feedback to this, we can submit it to DPIIT. Who cares? So you know what? That's also a message to the rapporteur if he's interested. So yeah. So I'm just stopping the sharing. But I think it's interesting that we have had very, very unique perspectives to discuss, and I think that added a lot. So to affirmatively conclude, what we will now do is maybe think about like, okay, fine, okay, what could be a way forward is obviously something we have discussed, but I think we should now maybe understand what each of us have learned from this discussion in some way, because I brought legal stalwarts from different domains also. Somebody from IT, somebody from corporate side, and I think that's great. And I also brought people in the tech side from different aspects, one from classics, cyber tech, and somebody in neurosymbolic, and obviously Bogdan. But any final perspectives? Maybe I'll give it to Marius this time, because this is a joint dialogue. So maybe final perspectives for you, Marius. What do you think of? I hope found this dialogues interesting. But yeah.
No, definitely very interesting, the dialogues, and I think this is where AI should head towards a multilateral dialogue, not just from tech people imposing their new inventions on the rest of the world, but also not just isolating from a regulation, because we also had the discussion. What also is always important in context to put. I mean, we all want to be in a regulatory environment because that gives certainty, that gives perspective of what we can focus on. What is only always annoying for us when we end up there is what work falls on our heads if it's very fragmented. I mean, I come from Europe, so we have a very fragmented regulatory system. When you think about taxing, when you think about employment and other things, it's a mess. So there are movements in this direction of the 28th regime and so on. I will not go into details, but this is what I mean when we talk about regulations. We also have to put context on it. Who should we regulate? I mean, larger corporations that have the money and the legal frameworks, they can usually navigate this easier, and smaller startups or give room for innovation. We always have to find a unifying platform that they can thrive as well and easily grow, because I think that's how the backbone of the entire economic system works on startups and small SMEs and so on, right? So I think that this is a very interesting discussion as well, and especially as we also tangented a bit about data, about basically bringing back, if you want to even monitor attribution or any kind of attribution back to the originators, because I think there is a need for incentives. Why to even create new original data? I mean, this was a part of the discussion where we said, will it end by 2028? I'm not sure about that, but we all know that it has been tainted since 2023 at mass scale, right, with AI-generated content. So the question moving forward is, who's producing original new data and so on? Are we just creating more machines talking to each other, or are we still, creating what actually is valuable? It's us, chatting and discussing and so on. So I think perspectives that have to all be covered. And this is a multilateral problem. So this is not just one corner solving a problem and then imposing it on everyone else. I think this kind of concludes it from my side, at least from my perspective.
Right. I will quickly let Sunil add, Sunil Khemka in this case, because he raised his hand multiple times, so I got confused. But please.
Yeah, I mean,
wish to conclude.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I completely agree with Marius. Like, what stands out from today's dialogue is the AI governance that cannot be siloed. I mean, it must be co-created across law, technology, and the society. I mean, the future depends on how we align incentives for openness, accountability, and innovation simultaneously, right? I mean, for India and Global South, like, this means building frameworks that democratize the access to the compute, data, and the research, while we embed some of the ethical and cultural context to that, right? I mean, and true progress will come when this regulation infrastructure, or they like we are talking about human values also, we evolve together, and so like AI become not just a technological revolution, I mean, but kind of rooted in shared responsibility. I mean, that's what I would like to add as a conclusion of this.
Okay, great. Before I let the rapporteur add his concluding points, I'm sure he might have something to add. Bogdan, I will let you add, but I would request you to be a bit short. I have nothing to disagree with you. Okay, it's just that I understand you get emphatic. So I just also try to be respectful with you. So, anything to conclude from your end from this discussion? Like, what did you think about the discussion? Yeah.
Better to get real and wake up from the irrational exuberance of the last 15 or so years, because history shown for, well, actually more than 15 years, that it is just all going down and crumbling. That's what it is. Overall, that is. Yeah, there's pockets here and there. They don't really matter much. Everything is more polarized, much more polarized, in fact. It is cultist, sectarian behavior. That's what it is. Belief in, well, nonsense, really. That's what it is. It's not even belief in a solid philosophy. That's nowhere near that. It's belief in nonsense. That's what it is. Way before GPT-3 and 2, but that just accentuated by tenfold, probably. The dogma of statistical modeling, which is really that nasty. I don't have even words for it. I can't find any in the dictionary that was never used. It's just a total false. It is not going to lead to anything intelligent ever. Laws of physics, it just can't. It just can't. Certainly, it has its uses. Absolutely, yes, it is. Intelligence, no way, no way, no way, no way. To the end of times is not going to get anywhere near that by itself. Simply because life doesn't fit bell curves. It never did, it never will. There's a reason that the gurus live in the forest and not in the front of some computer with some inferences out of masses of data. There's a good reason for that. Otherwise, you would see gurus, teaching people out of those machines. They don't. They never will, because they not really. And so the less we worship nonsense, the better. But it is difficult. It is difficult because it's a fog of war, a fog of nonsense, a fog of, lies, really, in various form of shapes. We call them deep fakes, but deep fakes are lies with intent. And of course, lies without intent. Misinformation is still a lie. It's still a lie. It's not intentional. We're not people that misinform don't want to spread lies. They just don't even know they spread lies. It's still a lie. It's still a lie. And that means trust has been destroyed. It has been. I don't believe anything I've seen online in an app. I just don't. If I can't verify it to a reasonable degree, I just reject it and delete it and never to be seen again. Also help my brain and spinal cord to function proper, because the reason of information overload. And unfortunately, that was a good problem to have 10 or so years ago, because it was good information 10, 15, 20 years ago, start piling up. But now it's information overload by, fakes and made up stuff. It's still an overload, but was of rubbish information, mostly. And so again, back to the point that I was talking before. Why even have it if it makes our life worse? Why even have GPT or diffusion models if they're making life worse. People less secure, in fact, very insecure. National security issues that didn't exist 5 years before. They didn't. Now they do at scale. Okay. So why even have them? Could that be because it's a concentration of power that drives all that? Could that be? It has nothing to do with making lives better and people better themselves. Like, let's not lie ourselves. That it has nothing to do with that. No matter what all the very important persons talk about all the time, is nothing to do with that. And the proof is that, how's your electricity bill, by the way?
I think we will.
And how you're getting on the roads? Is it better than in the
Yeah.
90s? Probably not. So there you go.
No.
The tech
Yeah.
is not what it used to be before. It stopped. It's kind of all down the hill around the 90s, pretty much, more or less. Stagnation, name of the game, at least in the Western world, and potential is there for sure. But now we see India. You all from India almost. You saw what happens. It's all mishy. Buy petrol from there. No, now you're gonna punish you for buying petrol from there. That we told you so.
Well,
But that's true, right? That's why you have those ridiculous tariffs. That's one big reason, not the only one. Unfair as it is, it's unfair. Does tech help with that? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Actually, tech is used to impose them. So
this no, I get it. That's of course a debate with petrol and everything, and I think that again, as I said, we can discuss Trumptomics. It would be so fun, but unfortunately, that's not the mandate. But I think I really love the humanistic angle to it, and as I said, and I concur with Sankalp on that. Since Atul is a bit happy to see what others have added perspective, I'll also quickly let him add for 1 minute, and then
So
the
my
rapporteur.
point is very simple. I mean, see, we're talking
Yeah.
about regulations, we're talking about governance and everything. One thing that everybody is looking forward to have is basically liability. Whose liability is it going to be at the end of the day? That aspect is going to be very critical going forward. We are faced with situations where there are multiple types of crimes that are being committed using technology, and that age is not too, I mean, the Terminator age is not too far from us. I mean, where the AI is actually the front runner of committing those crimes. So maybe we need solid regulations as soon as possible, where we know whose liability it is going to be. Take that hit at the end of the day, when who's going to be answerable to whom? And that is a very important question, which with time is going to be very, very critical for everybody to understand. Nothing is formed as of now. I don't think that even the existing laws are very clear on that aspect. Or nor do we have any kind of a situation where, or nothing has reached the court rather, to sense as to whether this is actually his liability, her liability, whatever it is. I mean, whether that particular AI platform makers are going to be completely responsible for everything that happens because of that AI. When does that liability, when do we draw the line, are all questions which are going to be very relevant as time as we progress insofar as this technological evolution is concerned.
Yep. Over to the rapporteur. What do you think, as somebody who has been reading about AI and law and published also? You also work with Casca under Dr. Abhinit Malli and RG Annual, and we obviously have interned at ICL. So What do you think as a law student? What is your perspective? Since you have been a rapporteur, what do you think? And with that, I think we can conclude. So yeah.
Yes, so to provide my own concluding remarks, being the younger one here of the in the panel, I am kind of more hopeful and optimistic about AI in the future. I understand the humanistic concerns that come around with technology, but I do think that with smart regulation, not over regulation, we might be able to curtail it a bit. The benefits of it are simply too much to ignore rather than just curtailing it down, all right. And second thing about AI and India's place in it, as Atul sir said, we need to have mechanisms in place, but the mechanisms need to be in place. The mechanisms don't need to be a sword on the head of the developers. And I think that this regulation needs to be smart, not immediate. And that's how balancing smart regulation where regulation is needed, and pulling it out a bit where you need to allow innovation. I think that's the way where we should balance it. And yeah, so those were my two conclusions from the session. Thank you, everyone.
Great. With this, we conclude. We look forward to the comments, and we will come up with an outcome document, hopefully sooner, in cooperation. Let us see how this goes. And yeah, I think it was a fantastic session in my view. We missed Arletta, but I think her comments will come in a different way, and that's totally fine. We have another dialogue on the 13th. That is a fireside chat kind of a thing with somebody in the bio research side of AI. And that's going to be fun with him, Ravi Sharma. He's into tech and biology, so we'll see that. But yeah, interesting week. 2 dialogues happening in the same week, which are joint dialogues. So that's the thing for ISIL. So congratulations, everyone. We are ending the recording, and thank you, everyone. Just one headshot, please. I think that is definitely needed. We have to put it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Insta. So thank you. Yeah, done. Thank you so much. And this is the
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
conclusion.
Thank you, everyone.